Welcome everybody. Welcome to the next phase of your training videos, which is called the business model phase. First of all, I would like to thank each and every one of you for taking the time off for actually getting here to learn. This tells me two things about you. Number one, all of you are extremely serious about learning, specifically about growing your business. So kudos to you on that. And two, you're also very serious about how you want to grow, because learning, like Rajiv has always been telling you, is the number one skill you require for you to grow as a business owner. So give yourself a round of applause. And if there's someone sitting next to you, give them a high five and say, you are an awesome business owner. Fantastic. So all of you ready to start learning right now? So far, you in the PACE implementation phase, you uncovered the personal aspirations of your team, where you understood how do you create the win-win-win philosophy between you and your team members as well as your customer. Then you went to the next stage, which was the business aspiration phase, where you understood what is it that you want to acquire for your business. What is it that you want to achieve, which is an aspiration goal, not a limitation goal, not a reaction goal, but an aspiration goal, a goal which really inspires you for you to achieve and is also a breakthrough for you. And there were 5 parameters in which you set an aspiration goal. The first parameter was called the financial centric parameter, where you set in revenue targets, you set in profitability targets or cash flow targets. The second parameter of the aspiration goal was the customer centric parameter. The third one was the team centric parameter. The fourth one was the functional centric parameter, and the fifth one was the learning centric parameter. And all of you have created smart goals in all of these areas, and you are clear today as to what is the goal you want to achieve. You also went ahead and asked yourself the question as to why is this important? What is that purpose? What is driving you for you to achieve that goal? And now that you know what you want to achieve and you know why you want to achieve, it's time to start thinking about how. And that's why this next phase is the business model phase, which is going to answer the question of how are you going to achieve your aspiration goal. Now remember, in the PACE program, I'm sure all of you remember, Rajiv mentioned to you that the different elements of clarity which you need to be clear about for you to achieve your aspiration goal. One of the elements which you got to be clear about is your business model, because the business model is the framework and the processes of how you will achieve the aspiration goal. And remember this, once you're clear if the business model is workable, that's when you are a lot more convinced that you will achieve the aspiration goal. Everybody say this with me. Clarity creates conviction. Now come on, repeat this after me. Clarity creates conviction. You do it now. Awesome. Give yourself a round of applause for that. So, are you ready to get clear on your business model right now? Because you getting clear in your business model will tell you exactly how you will achieve your aspiration goal. Before we actually get into understanding a business model or even understanding what is your business model, let's go back to the basics. Let's go back to what we learned in school. Okay, what is business? The most basic foundational definition of business. Business is an activity where you provide goods and services to your customer to address their needs, their problems, their desires in exchange for a profit. I want to repeat that for you again, and I want you to take this down. Business is an activity which provides goods and services to your customer to address their needs, their problems, their desires in exchange for a profit. I hope you've got that down. Now that you've understood the definition of business, let's understand where does this word business model come into the picture. Now, let's be honest, okay? This word business model sometimes is used, sometimes is abused. What really is a business model? Do you know what does it mean? Because we randomly throw these words around without understanding what really a business model is. Now, you know the definition of a business, and you combine the definition with the word model. That gives you the explanation that a business model is the story or the method of how the business is conducted or executed to achieve the outcome of the business. Now that you have your aspiration goal pretty clear, the way you're going to achieve that aspiration goal, the entire model, the entire strategy, how you're going to cater those goods and services to your customer, how you're going to make money out of it, All of that together is what is your business model. I hope that's extremely clear right now, and it is extremely important for us to understand what is the business model, for us to know how are we going to cater those goods and services to a customer, and more importantly, how are we going to profit from it, because if it's not profitable, it is not a business. I want you to repeat that with me. If it's not profitable, it's not a business. Then you're just doing social service. So, are you ready to get clear about your business model right now? All right, awesome. So, before we really get aware and learn about what are the elements which contribute to a good business model, let's go back to what we learned in the business space program. Remember what we learned in the business space program? Business is a wheel, and the wheel has spokes. The spokes of the wheel control the wheel. The spokes of the wheel give stability to the wheel. The spokes of the wheel controls the speed of the wheel. If the spokes are not there, the wheel is going to fall. There's zero control. And in business, the spokes of the wheel are represented by the business functions of the business. And there are 7 business functions. Yes, 7 business functions which are in any business. Any business, irrespective of which business you come from, whether you are a single man army, or whether you have a team of 4, 5, or whether you have a team of 10,000 people, irrespective of which industry you come from, there are 7 business functions. The 7 business functions are marketing, sales, operations, HRD, which is human resource development, R&D, which is research and development, finance and accounts, and finally the 7th and the most important business function, which is the management business function. This is the function which actually controls the speed, the stability, and the direction in which your business is going. So what are the 7 business functions? Marketing, sales, operations, human resource development, R&D, finance and accounts, and finally management. All these 7 functions together contribute to making a working and an effective business model. Any of these functions, if they're missing, it will not really contribute to having a good business model. Now, first, to understand how do these business functions integrate into your business model, let's understand the elements of a business model. There are 3 elements. 3 elements to create a working, profitable business model. The first element is the customer element, and according to me, this is the most important element to create a working business model. Because think about this, you are in business predominantly to serve the needs, problems, and desires of your customer. So obviously that's the most important element of the business model. And the 2 business functions which contribute to this particular element of the business model is the marketing and the sales function. Because the marketing function focuses on lead generation, which acquires the leads for the business, and the sales function focuses on selling the goods and services to the customer, where you generate revenue. The customer element. The second element of the business model is the product and the service element. Because think about this, go back to the definition of business. Once you know who your customer is, you are selling goods and services to your customer, right? So this is where your domain expertise comes into the picture. This is where your quality comes into the picture. This is where what you are actually selling to the customer comes into the picture. And the business function which contributes to the goods and services, the products and services of your business, is the operations function, and to a certain extent the R&D function. And finally, the third element of a business function is the financial element, or the financial angle of your business model. Because think about this, at the end of the day, whether you have your customer or you have your product, if it's not profitable, it's useless. You're not going to make any money. And in this angle of the business model, we understand what's the pricing, what's the cost, and keeping these 2 parameters in mind, how much money are we making? What's the profit? Because when a business model is created, what's most important is that apart from the fact that it's working, it needs to be profitable. So let's review this once again. There are 3 elements to a business model. The first one is the customer element. The second one is the product or the service element. And the third one is the financial element. We're now going to focus on the first element of the business model, which, like I already told you, is the most important element of the business model, which is the customer element. Because remember, we are predominantly in business because of the customer, because we're addressing the needs, the problems and the desires of the customer. And the first step for us to actually get clear about the customer element is to ask the simple and the most basic question: who is your customer? And for us to answer that question, we got to first understand what is the focus of our business. Are we B2B or are we B2C? Let's understand these two terminologies first, because we use these terminologies so many times and so often without understanding what it really means. B2B stands for business to business, which means that your goods and services serve another business, which means that your customer is another business or another enterprise and not a consumer. The needs and problems and the desires which you're focusing on, which your products and services actually solve or address, is for another enterprise. B2C stands for business to consumer, which means that the customer you are focusing on, the customer whose needs, problems and desires you are addressing, is a consumer for their personal reasons and not a business. So you can be a B2B business, you can be a B2C business, or you can be both. You can also be a B2CH business. B2CH stands for business to channel, which means that the needs and problems and desires of whom you are trying to address is a channel who again would sell to someone else, another business or another customer. So there are three business focuses: B2B, which is business to business, B2C, which is business to consumer, and B2CH, which is business to channel. And each of these different kind of business focuses have different kind of parameters you got to use to profile your customers. Think about this. If you are a B2B business, your customer is going to be another business. So what are the parameters you can use to profile them, to identify which kind of businesses are your customers? What is their employee strength? What is the domain they come from? What industry do they operate in? What is their turnover, the revenue which they have generated or the sales which they have generated? What is the profile of the decision maker who makes the buying decision about your products and services? What is their designation in the organization? What sort of budgetary constraints they have? Which location are they based out of? If location is an important criteria or a parameter for you, because a lot of times you are specifically focusing on businesses which are stated in a particular location. And a lot of businesses, whichever location they are a part of, it doesn't really matter. So all of these parameters put together are important for you to consider to identify and profile who is actually your target customer when it comes to business to business. Now let's explore the parameters for business to consumer. What is their age? Because I'm pretty sure you agree with me, depending upon what business you are in, you may or may not be selling to all age groups. Are you with me? So what is the age? What is their gender? Again, is location an important parameter for you to consider? What income brackets do they fall under? Because again, I'm pretty sure you'll agree with me that depending upon what you are selling, the income which the customer has also plays a huge role if they have those needs, problems and desires. What is their occupation? What is their marital status? What is their family status? And lots more parameters which could be relevant to your business you need to consider to identify and profile your customer. Now that you have identified and profiled your customer, the next step is to understand what are the needs, desires and problems of this particular target customer, whether it is B2B or it is B2C or it is B2CH. But before we go into understanding the needs, problems and desires of your customer, let's really understand how do needs really work. So I'm going to share something which some of you may be familiar with to bring in the context to understanding the needs, problems or desires, or like I call it, the NDP, which is the short form for needs, desires and problems of your customer. So here on, whenever I refer to needs, desires and problems, I'm going to say NDP, and I want you to use the same terminology so we speak the same language. Are you okay with that? So everyone say this with me. NDP stands for needs, desires, problems. Awesome. Give yourself a round of applause. So let's understand how needs really work. How many of you have heard of this theory called the Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Raise your hands, raise your hands. Right, nice and high. Awesome. So let me bring this back a little bit to you because I'm sure some of you have heard it before. Basically, Maslow says that human needs work in the form of a hierarchy, and based on that hierarchy, we give more importance to certain kind of needs. The most basic need, which is also the most fundamental and the most important need for human beings, are their physiological needs. Yes, think about this. You need to survive to live, you need food, you need water, you need shelter, which are the needs for your body, for your physiology, for you to survive. When those needs are actually being addressed, the next hierarchy or the next level of needs which is important for a human being are their safety and their security needs. And think about it in the world we live in today. As long as when we have a water, when we have the food and we have a shelter to live under, our physiological needs have been taken care of. Then the next priority goes to, are we living in a safe locality? Is there no threat to our life? Are we living in a situation where we can live consistently with stability when it comes to income? Safety and security, so we're able to survive. The third priority of needs, once your safety and security needs are addressed, are your love and belonging needs. This has a lot to do with the relationships you have with people. Obviously, this will only become important when your physiological needs as well as your safety and security needs have been addressed. Because I'm sure none of us are going to think about relationships when predominantly there's a threat to our life. Yeah, that's how human beings work. Now, because we have needs of love and belonging, that's why we give so much importance to our family. That's why we give so much importance to our friends and our social circles, because they are also important for us and a big priority in the form of a need for us to survive. The fourth priority of needs are our esteem needs, our status needs, our ego needs, because one of the most basic human needs is significance. Everybody loves significance. And yes, once our love and belonging needs are addressed, the next priorities are esteem needs. This is the reason why we all want to aspire and actually have better businesses, actually create better business results. This is the reason why people want to advance their careers. This is the reason why you have set those high aspiration goals, because you have esteem needs and you want to live a certain quality of life, which boosts the way we feel about ourselves and our surrounding environment. And finally, the fifth need, where when all of these other needs, which is our physiological needs, our safety and security needs, our love and belonging needs, and our esteem needs are addressed, the next priority goes to our self-actualization needs. Needs which we focus on to actually improve our personal abilities, the quality of life we live, the hobbies, the passions which we want to follow to live the dream life. And it works in the form of a hierarchy. Now, why am I sharing this with you? It works exactly the same way when it comes to customers, and let me show you how it works. For every product and service a customer buys, it's also addressing different forms of needs, desires, and problems. Let me show you how it works. Now, physiological needs are your basic necessities. The key word is necessity. And likewise, even for a customer, there are certain needs, problems, and desires which are core necessities which a certain product or service which you are selling can address. Safety and security needs create a certain comfort or convenience for an individual, and similarly for a customer, the products and services which they buy actually addresses certain comfort and convenience needs or problems or desires which they experience. Love and belonging needs are emotional needs for an individual, because that's what creates certain relationships. Makes them feel a certain way. And similarly, even for a customer, certain products and services address their emotional NDPs. Prestige needs are their status needs. And similarly, for a customer, certain products and services make them feel a certain way about themselves, gives them a certain status, gives them certain prestige factor which they are looking forward to in the form of needs, problems, and desires. And self-actualization makes them feel a certain sense of mastery, a certain sense of adventure in any product and service they buy, and that's what they're looking forward to, and that's what they value. And different products can have different kind of needs for different kind of customers. Sometimes the same product can address a different level of need for different customers. That's why more than your product, the most important part is to identify who's your customer, because I'm sure you will agree with me that the value which customers are looking forward to are different for different customers. A customer who has an income of about 10,000 US dollars will definitely have different needs, problems and desires from a customer who has an income of over 100,000 US dollars, because their level of needs, their level of comfort, convenience, kind of emotion they want to feel are different. Okay, let me give an example. Let's look at the first level of need, core necessity. Now let me give you a simple example. Say a water purifier, or say toothpaste, or say certain kind of clothes, basic amenities which you buy. All of them are addressing certain necessities for certain kind of people. Now let's look at an example for comfort and convenience. Let's just say a microwave oven, or say a washing machine. It's not a necessity. It creates a comfort or convenience for certain kind of people, for certain kind of customer segment. Now let's look at emotion. Okay, sometimes the value which products and services give us are emotional in nature. Say for example, insurance. Yeah, it's an emotional need, and for some people it's also a comfort or convenience need. Okay, say certain kind of products which are focused on babies or mothers as a target audience. And here's the beauty about how needs and desires and problems work. One particular product can be positioned differently for different kind of customer segments depending upon what is a priority or need for them. Let's say for example, a soap. Ultimately a soap has the same function to purify your body, to clean your body. But there are certain soaps which are basic in nature, which are positioned to address a comfort or a convenience need. There are certain soaps which are positioned to address an emotional need. Say for example, beauty soaps. Say for example, baby soaps. It's a soap, but still it's addressing a different need. Let me give you another example. Let's look at phones. Now there are multiple different varieties of phones. There are phones which are low cost. There are phones which are high cost. There are phones which have a low brand value. There are phones which have a high brand value. It's a phone. It has the same functional outcome. It is used to make calls. It's used to use the internet and to communicate with people, irrespective of the price. Here's the truth. Features may be slightly different for different kind of phones, but ultimately the functional objective is the same. And therefore, depending upon what the customer values, depending upon the level of needs, desires and problems for different kind of customer segments, phones are positioned differently. Some people buy a phone purely for comfort and convenience. Even though the features are pretty much the same as an expensive phone also, they would buy a phone which is a little more reasonable in pricing. Some people buy a phone because it's an emotional value for them. It may be their first phone. It may be a phone which is a little more pricey but makes them feel a certain way. Some people buy phones because it's the brand of the phone. Some people buy phones because of the way it makes them feel about themselves. It gives them a certain status symbol. Yeah? Let's take another example. Let's look at cars. The functional outcome of a car is to take you from one place to another. It's to help you to commute fundamentally. But some people buy cars because it addresses a comfort and a convenience need or a problem or a desire. And they would probably go for a low cost car which is a little more fuel efficient. Some people buy cars because it creates a certain emotional value for them. And therefore, certain cars are positioned for that particular customer segment to make them feel a certain emotion while they're buying the car. And that's why they buy the car. Whereas some cars, it creates a value or addresses a need which is a prestige factor, because some people buy cars because it's a status symbol for them. Similarly, different products are positioned differently to address different kinds of levels of needs. There are cars which even address a certain need or value which creates a sense of mastery and adventure. I'm talking about the sporty kind of outdoor cars. Ultimately, they're cars. They're used to travel from one place to another. Same product, different need, because the customers they're focusing on is different. And I want you to remember this: when you are clear about the needs, desires and the problems on different levels for your customer segment, you will know what does your customer really value, so you know what product fits for them, and then you will also know how to market and sell it. Does that make sense, everybody? So what you need to be clear about are the different kinds of needs, and let's review the different kinds of needs. The first priority of needs are your necessity needs. The second priority of needs are your comfort and convenience needs for the customer. The third kind of needs, problems and desires are the emotional level of NDPs. The fourth one is the prestige factor, and the fifth one is mastery and adventure. So let's consolidate. What really is a customer need? The customer need is the basic primary reason or the requirement which the customer has, because of which they buy those products from you. Let me give you an example. Let's just say if you have a business which is into a restaurant, the customers which come to your restaurant, their primary need is to eat food or to have a certain experience. Let's just say your business is an apparel store. The reason or the need why your customers come to you is to buy clothes. Maybe they want different varieties of clothes. Maybe they're looking for design, different varieties of design, or a certain color combination of clothes. Let's just say you're in the business of construction, constructing homes and apartments. People, the needs why people actually buy an apartment or a home is because they need a place to live in, or they want to give the place on rent, or they want to buy the home because it's an investment for them. Let's just say you're in the hospital business. People who come to you as customers, their needs are to get treatment, or to gain consultation. And here needs are of two categories. The first kind of categories of needs is called extrinsic needs. Again, extrinsic needs. Extrinsic needs are physical needs, needs which can be seen, needs which can be smelt, which can be felt, needs which are tangible, which are external in nature. These are the needs which actually create the transaction. It's for these needs for which your customer is paying you the money, the exchange or the transactions happening for your extrinsic needs. And when it comes to the hierarchy of needs, necessity and comfort and convenience needs are usually extrinsic in nature. The second category of needs are intrinsic needs. Now, while extrinsic needs are visible and tangible, intrinsic needs are invisible. They are not really tangible. They are the needs which people do not see. They are the needs which people are not paying money for, but do definitely need it while you are providing your products and services. These are needs which are not a part of the transaction. They are internal in nature. They are abstract. They are emotional. They are psychological in nature. And when it comes to the hierarchy of needs, emotional needs, prestige and mastery and adventure are usually intrinsic needs. Now, needs have two categories. What are the categories again? Extrinsic and intrinsic. The second element for you to understand the customer psychology are the customer's problems. Now, what are customers' problems? Customers' problems are the problems which the customer faces within the domain of your business. You may be solving those problems today, or you may not be solving these problems today. Those are immaterial at this stage of the discovery process. But mentioning and understanding the problems your customer faces is important for you to understand how can you solve them and specialize in your product and service. Let me give an example of a few customer problems. Let's just say if you're in the restaurant business, the problems which customers face while going to a restaurant are that they need to wait to get a table, or the food quality is not that great, or worse, the food is cold, or the waiter or the waitress does not address them with the right kind of respect and experience. Let's look at an apparel store. The problem which a customer faces when they go into an apparel store is that no one is tending to them. No one is consulting or showing them what would suit them, or there's not enough variety, or the designs are not appropriate, or the experience which they go through to actually select the right kind of apparel is not up to the mark. And the third element for you to understand the customer psychology is to understand the customer's desires. Now, what are customers' desires? Desires are what the customers would love to have and may not expect from your products and services. This is what would make them feel delighted. but not necessarily what they're paying for. So they may not expect it. And because of this, it would add a lot more value to the customer and build an effective relationship with them. Let's take a few examples. Let's just say when you're going to a restaurant, a customer's desire in a restaurant is while they are waiting for a seat, there is some entertainment or something to engage them so that they're not getting bored. Another desire could be is probably a free appetizer so that when they're waiting for their food to come, they're at least eating and fulfilling their hunger. Let's just say when it comes to an apparel store, a desire is that there's a good music playing in the background which creates a good ambience in the environment so that you feel like making the right decision and buying a product. Another desire could be is that you get personalized service from the salesperson right from the beginning till the end of your buying time so that you buy the right product with the right fit and also looks great. Now these are examples of desires which can help the customer feel delighted, but may not be the reason, may not be the factor which is getting them to pay the money for the product and service, because ultimately they're paying the money for the product and services for the product they are buying. So it is non-transactional in nature. And again, there are two categories of desires: extrinsic and intrinsic. So let's review. What are the three elements you need to keep in mind to understand the psychology of the customer? Needs, problems, and desires. Let's take a quick example of consolidating needs, problems, and desires for a business case. Let's just say this is a business which is into the business of HVAC and R products and projects, which basically means they manufacture air conditioners and heaters for different kind of customers. Now this business has two focus areas when it comes to customers. They are B2B and they are B2C. Let's first explore their B2B, which is their business to business focus area or model. Now, the customer target for B2B businesses for this kind of business is basically a company or an organization which has more than 100 employees, because they will need a centralized air conditioning system for them to manufacture and supply to this customer. And usually the kind of industries which actually procure these kind of air conditioners as well as heaters could be hatcheries, power and steel plants, manufacturing plants, educational institutions, hotels, basically industries and businesses which have huge infrastructure which needs this kind of equipment at a larger scale. And for industries and businesses to afford this kind of high level infrastructure for air conditioning specifically, the turnover or the sales revenue for such kind of a business for the customer they're actually catering to should be at least about $7 million, because that's when they'll have a need or a requirement of such high level, large volume infrastructure of air conditioners and heaters. The location may not really matter, because wherever they are in your country, they could obviously supply this kind of air conditioners and heaters and install them. And finally, the decision maker. This is a very, very important parameter, because you need to know who is the decision maker also in the B2B business, because their personality, their psychology, their designation plays a huge part to influencing the buying decision. And in this kind of a business, the decision maker's profile will probably be the facilities manager, could be an architect also because they design this entire infrastructure when they're constructing the building, or could be the general manager of any department. Now, let's look at the other kind of business model, which is a B2C, because this business of HVAC can also cater to the consumer, all right? Because even consumers like us, we buy air conditioners for our home, yes or no? Yeah. Now let's look at the kind of criteria which are important for you to identify who is the right kind of customer who will be able to buy, who will have a need for these kind of products. Age should be above 25 and above, because usually that's when they're earning an income to make a decision to buy an air conditioner. Gender irrelevant, male or female doesn't really matter. Location could be a good criteria over here for you to consider, because in cool places the right product for you to focus over there would be the heating equipment, but in warm places where the climatic conditions are pretty hot, the air conditioner would sell better, and therefore customers in those particular locations would have those particular needs. Income, a very critical criteria for a consumer for you to decide if they have a need for the product or service in this particular case situation. Because think about this, not everybody can afford to buy an air conditioner or a cooling system, and it purely depends upon their income. And usually the people who have a salary or an income above 30,000 USD per annum are the people who usually, without thinking, buy an air conditioner or a heater based on the requirement. Marital status. Single, married may not be really relevant in this case, but if you really want to go deep a little bit, people are probably getting married, just about getting married, and they want to do up their homes, are the people who would look forward to making their homes comfortable and therefore buying an air conditioner or a heater. Occupation. Corporate employees or say owners of small and medium enterprises are the people who usually can have a salary or an income above 30,000 USD and therefore would be the right kind of occupation for you to filter when it comes to these kind of customers. And finally, family status. Individual or joint really doesn't matter because that has no bearing on the decision to buy an air conditioner or a heater. Right? Now let's look at the needs of these particular customers. And again, there are two kinds of needs, extrinsic and intrinsic. Now let's explore a few examples. Let's explore some examples for extrinsic needs of the customer. Comfortable cooling. Now this is a direct need for a B2B business because of which they acquire an air conditioner or a air conditioner in their offices. Chilled cooling, say for B2C, low power bills, low maintenance. Product aesthetics, basically the way it looks, the way it feels should be attractive and contribute to the look and feel of the place where it's installed and should also create a healthy environment. Now these are the basic extrinsic needs because of which customers buy an air conditioner. Now let's look at the intrinsic needs, the emotional needs, the psychological needs, the internal and the invisible needs. May not be directly the reason why they're buying it, but are extremely critical, which influences the buying decision of the customer. Saving money, because a lot of times when you have the right kind of air conditioning equipment, it saves a lot on the power bill and therefore especially in B2B scenarios has a huge implication to the amount of cost saving which the organization has, right? Trustworthy and committed partnership when it comes to maintenance activities, when it comes to ensuring that service is done in the right manner. Because imagine infrastructure being so huge and the amount of equipment which is being installed, there could be a lot of problems and service issues which the customers may face. Is the vendor or the manufacturer reliable enough for them to ensure that any kind of service requests are being adhered to? It needs to be a one-stop solution, which means that any kind of issue or any kind of extra parts also which they need to acquire should be available with this manufacturer itself so that they don't go and coordinate with multiple people. And it needs to be an all-weather solution because in a lot of countries the climatic conditions are extreme. Sometimes it's really, really warm, sometimes it's really, really cold. Irrespective of what the climatic condition is, you need to use an AC to condition the air. So it should work in all kind of climatic conditions. So these are examples of extrinsic and intrinsic needs for a customer, particularly for an HVAC business. Now let's explore the extrinsic and intrinsic problems which these customers face and how can these products and services address those problems. Price and service. Now usually these are extrinsic problems which B2B and B2C customers face because of which they're not able to get the right kind of product. Non-timely delivery of the project. Plant shutdown, where basically because their plant is shut down, there's a production loss, there's a system error because of which a lot of wastage happens in the installation of these products and services. Door delivery and home service is not done appropriately because of which when customers pay the money for the product, they don't get their product on time, which is a huge service problem people face, which this particular business can solve. And lastly, a different kind of a problem which people face is that the brand of the product is not that popular, therefore the credibility and the trust it has is not up to the mark. Now let's look at the intrinsic problems these customers have while purchasing an air conditioner or a heating system. A big intrinsic problem these customers have is that they have this fear that when I need the air conditioner the most, what if it doesn't work? What if it gets spoiled? What if because of excessive usage the entire system gets shut down? Now because of this fear, it stops them from buying certain brands of air conditioners and heaters because they don't have confidence or trust on the product itself. Another big problem which customers have is that during high usage of these products and services, the electricity bill comes really, really high. Let's just say in summer season, the air conditioner is on all the time, and if the air conditioner consumes a lot of electricity and power, the bill is really, really high. And these are intrinsic problems which customers face, which this particular business can solve by customizing their products and services to address these problems. Now let's look at the last element, the desires which these customers have. Let me remind you that a desire is something which the customer would love to have but may not expect, which means that it will really delight them if they have it, but they would not be paying for that value which they get. They pay for the transaction which they physically get, which is the air conditioner in this case. Before time project delivery, think about this particular desire. Customers would love to have the delivery or the installation of the project before the timeline which is committed, especially in the B2B scenario. Let's just say, to make matters better, the maintenance activity in case something goes wrong is either at low cost or better yet for free. That's a great desire for customers, and they would love to have that and would make them feel delighted. What if the entire equipment is good looking rather than looking very raw or robust? Now it adds to the visual appeal of the place and would add a lot of value in the place where they're installing the entire device. Easy to fit, easy product installation. If there's any kind of issues, they can resolve it themselves. These are small but very, very critical desires which customers have, which would add a lot of value and create a delightful experience for the customer to use the product. And having clarity on this becomes very critical for you to identify what does your customer need, what does your customer desire, and what problems your customers face, so you know how to position your product to your customer, which can influence their buying decision. So let's review. There are 3 elements for you to be clear about your customer. The first element are their needs. The second element are their problems. And the third element are their desires. And there are 2 categories of needs, problems and desires. They are extrinsic and they are intrinsic. So here's what I want you to do. You will be getting a task which will be emailed to you with a complete discovery process for you to identify who's your customer using different kind of parameters, B2C, B2B, etc. And you will have a long questionnaire where you will help you to uncover what are the needs, problems and desires for each of your customers. While you are uncovering and discovering the needs, problems and desires of your customers, I want you to categorize it in 2 categories, extrinsic and intrinsic. Also, to make matters a little more clear, while you're writing down the needs, problems and desires, I want you to rate the intensity of the needs, problems and desires on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest. Let me tell you why this is important. It is important for you to understand what is of priority for your customer and what is not of priority for the customer. Because there is no point of focusing on marketing your product on needs and problems and desires which are not of priority, because it's not of value to your customer. Now let me clarify something. We are talking about needs, problems and desires of your customer, not what you think are the needs, problems and desires of your customer. So when we are talking about intensity, it's from the customer's point of view, not from your point of view. So sometimes we come into situations where we think the customer requires it, but the actual truth is the customers really don't need it, and therefore they're not willing to pay for it. So a useful question to ask yourself when you are writing down the priority or you're writing down the intensity and rating the needs, problems and desires is this: to what extent are customers willing to pay for this need, pay for this problem to be solved, or pay for the desire to be met? That will give you the true value of what is the intensity of that need, problem and desire. Thank you so much for listening to this entire training video. Now it's time for you to take action. Now it's time for you to get aware of what are the needs, problems and desires of your customer, so you understand your customer psychology better. In the next video, what we're going to focus on is to integrate your products and services along with the needs, problems and desires of your customer. So look out for our next video. See you soon.